Knobloch's Dance presents Dance Behind the Screen, Process Production and Social Media. Hey knowers, welcome to our podcast. We are Knobloch's Dance, a social media-based company. We strive to say no to the box. We connect interdisciplinary art, technology, and artists to re-envision the process of art making and sharing.
Welcome back to Dance Behind the Screen podcast. We're your co-host, Reyna.
And this is Martheya.
And we're so super excited because we got to interview Yoni Avital, who is the International Director of Kibbutz Contemporary Dance Company. Woohoo!
Yes. Oh my gosh. I was honestly so starstruck. We actually both got to see Kibbutz Contemporary Dance Company back in 2017 when they were in Dallas, Texas. So it's been crazy. We've been following their journey along on social media, of course, and then to actually talk to Yoni about the company. Oh my gosh, fangirling.
Super hard.
Hopefully we don't sound too nervous.
I know.
But the Kibbutz Contemporary Dance Company is under the artistic direction of Rami Be'er, and his work is really grounded in negotiating the primal and innovative.
Yes. Which was really exciting to hear all of that juicy stuff he talked about. But he also really talked about the summer intensive and the study abroad. For those who are listening, who are totally interested in this type of stuff, make sure you stay tuned because he really digs deep into what they're looking for, what they do, their day-to-day, what their day-to-day looks like.
Exactly, and we'll link, of course, all that in our show notes. He also talks a little bit about the history of Israel and its relation to forming a kibbutz and Kibbutz Contemporary Dance Company, and he gives a little bit more insight on the programming for Kibbutz Contemporary Dance Company. So we hope you guys really enjoy this episode. Again, we were so starstruck. It was such a pleasure to talk to Yoni, so we hope you enjoy the show.
Stay tuned and listen.
Well, Yoni, welcome to our podcast. So to start us off, can you go ahead and share with our audience who might not know the history of Kibbutz Contemporary Dance Company? We realize it has its roots in the Holocaust, and we were hoping you could kind of walk us through the lineage.
Yes.
Sure. Well, our company, like you said, its roots go way back to the Second World War, even before that, with a young girl who was brought up by, then it was Czechoslovakia. Today, of course, it's Czech Republic and Slovakia. But her family, she was of Jewish origin. And when the war did break out, shortly afterwards, a few years later, her family was sent to Auschwitz, one of the more notorious and well-known concentration camps. So she was a prisoner in the camp, living in the barracks amongst other prisoners and engaging in slave labor every day. And one of the tactics that she used for survival was dancing for the fellow inmates in the evenings after the workday was over.
Wow.
Shortly after, at one point, it was the last Christmas of the war, which was December of 1944. And the other German officers, they heard of this woman who was dancing in one of the barracks in the evenings. And one of them demanded that she come before them and entertain them for their Christmas party that late December of 44. This woman, small in stature, Yehudit Arnon, was her name, just refused this request. And in that scenario, in that reality, a refusal is normally a death penalty. So they pretty much decided that they'll just have her freeze out in the winter snow that night, that December night. And she promised herself then and there that if she would survive this punishment, this decree, that she dedicated the rest of her life to dance and also dance education. So as we know, the war ended in April of 45. The camp was liberated, and she first made her way to a DP camp and then to Budapest, Hungary. where she already got herself right away involved in the dance scene in Budapest. Then towards the late 40s, when Israel became a state and there was a massive migration of many Holocaust or Second World War survivors to what was then the new state of Israel, she made her way with other Hungarian immigrants, and they settled this kibbutz, this village in the north of Israel, in the Western Galilee of northern Israel, called Kibbutz Gaton. And like the 200 plus other kibbutzim, they were mostly based on survival, with everyone working together for the common good. That's a basic concept of a kibbutz that's been going on now for over 100 years. But this young Kibbutz Gaton, was also based on agriculture between citrus and bananas and avocados. And she, like other members of this young kibbutz, had to engage in agriculture and working the land in the kibbutz, around the kibbutz, in the Western Galilee of northern Israel. So she didn't really have the time or the opportunity to really, delve into her dream of dedicating her life to dance education. So for the first 2 decades, she didn't really have much of a choice, but she kept on asking and kept on pushing for this. And finally, in the early 70s, in 1970, the fellow kibbutz members gave her this space, what was the old tobacco drying plant, which is basically a big hall on the kibbutz. And that was the first quote unquote studio in 1970.
Wow.
And then it was based on the members of the kibbutz were basically dance, non-professional, but just dance lovers. Nowhere near where it is today, of course. But that's where it all began with Yehudi Tehran.
Could you kind of talk about how that transitioned from, you said about 1970 is when Yehudi had the kibbutz given to her, and how did that show up now with Rami Be'er as the head? I read in 1996. I read, like, in preparing for this interview, that he was a student of hers. So how do you think he became a student of hers? How did that shape in the community?
Well, Rami's parents were also survivors of the war, of the Holocaust, and they also made Aliyah. Aliyah is actually the Hebrew word, which literally means going up, but Israel is, as you might know, it's not necessarily the Himalayas, but it's more of a spiritual ascent. So his parents, to the whole quote unquote Holy Land. So his parents also made Aliyah and moved from Europe to Israel after the war, and also established the kibbutz together with Yehudi Tehran and Yehudi's husband and other immigrants that I mentioned before. So Rami was born on the kibbutz.
Oh, wow.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, he was born on the kibbutz in the late 50s. And already from a very, very young age, he was taking dance classes, what they called ritmika, on the kibbutz with Yehudi. So she was his teacher from early years of his life. And he already had that direction. Of course, he could have done a lot of other things in his life. He's a multidisciplinary artist. That's, I don't want to sound all that biased, but he's extremely talented in many, many fields when it comes to the performing arts. Everything between lighting and costumes, everything even outside of choreography.
Yes, we can't wait to talk more about that a little bit later.
So she pretty much picked him out of the group and developed his skills. He honed his skills from an early age. And then he eventually joined the company, and already in the early 80s, well after a decade after the company was established, and after Yehudit already brought names like Matzek and others to work with the company and get the company on a higher caliber. Rami already in the 80s was already starting to create full evening pieces. And that was when she really saw his talent over the others and guided him towards becoming the artistic director, which he officially took over in 1996.
Nice. So I was wondering, as we were talking about kibbutz and the environment that's been created there, it leads me to the question of what you have an international dance village. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So with the establishment of the main company, I mentioned that Rami took over in the mid 90s as officially the artistic director. Just around that time, he also established the second company. So we do have a second or junior company known as KCDC2, Kibbutz Contemporary Dance Company 2, who also perform all over Israel and throughout the world. But the mission of our second company is not only to perform on stages, side by side our main company. So we have two companies touring around the world, but really to reach out and connect to the younger audience, whether it's elementary school or high school age audiences who would normally never have access to contemporary art. In our case, of course, dance. So that's been the mission of our second company, and they have an equally rigorous schedule, if not even more rigorous schedule than our main company. They perform in elementary schools and high schools and also theaters all over Israel and abroad. Maybe the works that are by Rami, maybe they're more relevant to younger audiences and it makes the material more accessible.
Right.
But that's what our second company is doing. The reason I'm talking about the second company is I'm getting to the dance village, which is what we've had for the last few decades. So between our two companies, our main and second companies, in 2009, we developed two other programs, or two programs rather, which is the Kibbutz Summer Intensive and the Dance Journey program. So these additional programs, alongside with our companies, alongside with being on this kibbutz of 400 or 500 people, gave us the ability to innovate on a different scale. And Rami and our team realized that this is really a place to develop something for the international audience, for the international dance community, and as well as the Israeli. And during that time, I guess you could say in the course of the last 15, 20 years, is really when this all transpired of creating this dance village. I'll jump forward kind of to more recent years, where today we have 11 studios in this village.
Amazing.
That's awesome.
Full-fledged dance studios. A number of which are actually the kibbutz's former dining hall, its former kitchen, its former dishwashing room, the former cafeteria. As you might know, the socialist structure of the kibbutz, where everyone's working together for the common good,
right,
has been changed in Israel, especially during the mid 90s. So things have become more privatized. So the kibbutz members in this kibbutz gaton no longer use the common dining hall and the kitchen, etc. So the dance company, we basically took over these spaces, created linoleum or marley floors with ballet bars all around, mirrors, etc., and converted all these spaces of the former kibbutz into our dance company studios.
You are listening to Navox Dance.
How were all of these different, I guess, programmings, for lack of a better words, existing in one village? Maybe it would be helpful to talk more, I guess, about the first company and the second company to get a better understanding maybe of their day-to-day life. Just because I feel like for me, living in America, it's kind of hard to imagine this communal creative environment.
Right.
It's all one space. I've been looking at pictures and things like that, but having never been there, it's really hard for me to truly imagine what it would be like to be there. So I'm just kind of hoping you could kind of describe maybe a daily life, what life is like for someone in the company there, for you there, or for Rami Be'er there, so we could get a better visual of that.
Sure. So our main and second company dancers, they all live on the kibbutz in Kibbutz Gaton in the International Dance Village. They all have either studio type apartments or shared apartments that are a 1 to 2 minute walk from all of our studios and the theater on the kibbutz.
Oh, that's so nice.
The average day would include waking up to serenity, having a quiet breakfast, walking with your colleagues or colleagues or by yourself through the fields of the kibbutz, like through the big lawns of the kibbutz towards either the studio where our main company and second company start their day. So they will normally start their day in the morning with a ballet class. Even though we're a contemporary dance company, we do believe in the foundation of ballet. So it's normally the warm-up will be an hour and a half or so of ballet. Today, our main and second company dancers begin their day in a brand new studio named after Rami Be'er, our artistic director's late father. So we just built this beautiful studio, very high ceilings, right behind our theater. So they'll start their day there. And then normally our main company will make their way to the Zichri Theater, literally on the other side of the wall. This is a 150% theater that has all the lighting and all the space that we might need throughout the year when the company is creating the new work, or when Rami is creating his new work for that season. So that's where they'll start their day, and it's usually working and creating or rehearsing for a new premiere or rehearsing for the next tour, Israeli or international tour. And the second company, will go to another studio where they'll also continue their day working if they're not performing elsewhere.
Could you walk us through what is the Summer Dance Intensive and how is choreography an element of the intensive?
Well, the Kibbutz Summer Intensive is something that we've been running now since 2009, and we've had well over 3,000 participants since.
Oh, wow.
It's a program that originally was more heavy set on Israeli participants, but that we've since opened up to the international community. So each July and August, we host during 3 separate 2-week sessions. We host either a 2, 4, or 6-week option for high school and university age dancers. So from dancers age 13, 14 and up, even though it's also open very much for BFA students in the States, Europe, and elsewhere, or even graduates that want to come and study with us. So these dancers have really fully immersed experience in terms of being hands-on with professional dance community, and also the whole cultural immersion of coming to the Middle East, to Israel, and traveling as well around the country.
Is their day-to-day structure similar to the company structure like you talked us through earlier?
Very much so. So the normal day will be, roughly 9 to 5. So everyone's starting their day in the summer intensive. They start the day with a communal breakfast in the dining hall that we set up during the summer intensive.
Oh, that's lovely.
So everyone's eating together. So you'll be having breakfast with, Americans, French, Dutch, Argentinians, Chinese, Australians, whatnot, the South Africans, which is
still creating
quite
that common ground space.
Yeah. And then everyone will make their way to one of the 5 different groups or classes that they've been placed in. So that's one thing. At the summer intensive, we made a decision not to have auditions for this intensive because we want to open it up to a broader audience. So we do have a more beginner/intermediate level towards a more pre-professional levels. So yeah, during the summer intensive, they have 2 sessions each morning. They break for lunch together again, and then we'll have 2 afternoon periods as well before they finish up their day and likely make their way to the pool to relax with dinner. So that's the structure of the intensive, and of course, many dance students are coming to us from around the world to study kibbutz repertoire, and that's really the focal point of the program, of course, to work with Rami Be'er's repertoire, working with our company dancers, our company dance teachers, and really, delving into the language of the kibbutz dance company.
Could you talk more about the free studio space where they have time to create? Because I feel like that's something that not a lot of intensives offer, like I mentioned.
Yeah, there is studio space available after hours on the weekends for dancers or dance students or participants to work on their own material. This is also available in the summer intensive, but more so really it's a significant part of the dance journey program of our 5-month program, which is the study abroad program that we have for university age and older students that come to us each February and September. So that's more let's say, I guess, a built-in aspect of the dance journey program.
Don't forget to say no to the box.
We were both actually able to see his work perform Horses in the Sky. And this was back in 2017 when you all were in Dallas, Texas. And this was part of the Titus Presents season. So according to the website, his work is described as a unique multidisciplinary language, which combines movement with stage design, lighting, and costumes. And you two also mentioned his interdisciplinary expertise, if you will, earlier. So I'm personally curious, what does his dance making process actually look like? So if we were in the studio, or I don't know, is it in the studio where maybe an idea first comes to mind, and could you walk us through that process?
Sure. Well, I think one thing that you have to take a step back and realize that Israeli dance is, for being a rather small country, Israeli dance in general has a very big place on the international dance scene. And has made a significant impact. I think many people would, I understand that's in a very subjective comment, but I think many people would agree to that.
Could you explain why that is?
Why that is a very good question. Why that is. Israel's history, Israel's place in the world geographically and on other levels is complex, is challenging. And this is coming from me personally in my own perspective. I think Israel is just a country that has survived and had to prove itself repeatedly throughout its young history.
Right.
And then this type of society and reality, it provides or necessitates some kind of extreme innovation, and extreme, out of the box type of thinking. And I could say with confidence, even though this is my own opinion, but the way I see it is that the way Israeli artists approach their respective art is just different. And it comes from what I spoke about and perhaps many other individual reasons. But there is something to Israeli contemporary dance between our company, Batsheva Dance Company, and others that has offered the world a different flavor. I don't know if you necessarily caught that when you saw Horses in the Sky in Dallas a few years back. But there's something, there's an added value, to our company and Rami's repertoire that I believe audiences who are, very well versed in contemporary dance don't find elsewhere.
For me, it's hard to pinpoint. Only have seen the work once, what that element is. Do you have a sense of what you think the element is? I think it's something about the history that I keep coming back to, but I feel like there's something else.
Well, there's definitely a physicality in our dance company that I think is very unique. At the same time, Rami Be'er, Artistic Director, who's, as I mentioned, was born and raised in Kibbutz Contemporary, and that's where he chose to live his life and continue to develop the dance company and bring it to new heights. But he's living in the Western Galilee, in a very serene place, a corner of the world, where you wake up to nature, you wake up to animals, you're able to walk around the fields there, you're able to have a sense of inner peace by at the same time, being amongst this international art community and being in Israel, for all that comes with it. So it is hard for me to talk specifically about Rami's motivation, his processing.
Mm.
Um, but between what I did say and his annual schedule, where he does create in the studio for a few months at a time each season, together with the dancers, working with the dancers on different thematic elements, working on the music, working on the light design and the costume design, and every small element of the new premiere of that season. Rami takes everything into account, whether it's his dancers, their personalities, their personas, the nature where he's living, perhaps some political ramifications. It's a whole I guess complex composition. And one thing he doesn't necessarily want to present the audience with a very clear picture of what it is. Our programs often don't have a very long text, and this is very intentional. Where some choreographers or company want to, display
Provide all that information.
provide the entire, history, motivation, process. Rami will choose to have more of a less is more type of thing, because he wants people to bring their own associations, whether they're novices or whether they are very well versed in contemporary dance. But he wants people to bring their own history, their own association, have the theater lights come down and have them go on their own personal journey.
For our listeners who are emerging artists, what would be some advice that you could give them when applying for instance, applying for the summer intensive or coming to the audition? What advice would you give them?
Well, should they choose to join us either in the summer months or to come for a 5-month semester, without being all that biased, since I'm with the company, but it's this is a very special place where you could come and receive artistic support, artistic development, all while discovering yourself and building on your international network on a much different level. So dancers that come to both of our programs, this is really something that people often more than not say that this was the best decision I've made in my life thus far. To go outside of their own box, outside of their own safe cocoon, and leave their maybe dance academy or university or high school, and leave their family and community for whether it's 2, 4, or 6 weeks in the summer or for a 5-month semester throughout the year, and come and live with us on this kibbutz. So for one, you're meeting like-minded young artists from all over the world. You're working side by side with our main company dancers and second company dancers as well, and our dance teachers, and also with Rami himself. You're working on your original creations that we spoke about before, which is something that we very much believe in. As part of your educational process, when you're working and innovating within your own mind and with your own studio space, together with your colleagues, you're able to develop on a much, much higher level when you're engaging in composition. And then you're able to also meet people who live on the kibbutz. You're able to travel Israel. Our dance journey program also offers you a chance to have Hebrew language classes during the week.
Oh wow!
So you're able to learn some conversational Hebrew while you're at it. But at the same time, you're in a very intensive. Of course, the summer intensive has the word intensive in its title, but both programs are quite intensive compared to other academies or programs around the world. And they do push you on a different level. We have dancers from our summer intensive that continually come back to us every year during their summer break. We have dancers, of course, from the summer intensive that choose to, after they come to us for 2, 4, 6 weeks in the summer, they come to us for the dance journey program, should they be accepted. So there is a sense of also family here.
Because they keep returning back.
Yeah, they keep returning, but also just this sense, it's hard to explain or describe in the conversation, but the atmosphere on the kibbutz where you have, high-level professional dancers from Israel and from all across the world, living and working side by side with dance students. There's a beautiful cafe and a restaurant in the dance village. It's adjacent to our theater. There's a pub that's open a few nights a week. So there's a lot of space outside the studio workspace to be together, and be together more informally. So I could only imagine similar large companies in Paris or New York or London. There must be a huge dichotomy between the professional dancers and dance students who come study under that umbrella. Here it's very, very different because everyone's living together in the village, and they have all the places in the village to socialize outside of just teaching formats. So you have the sense of family and community, which is what a kibbutz is really all about. So that is something that we certainly continued.
So I hear that there's a lot of connections happening, which is really exciting. And it makes me wonder, so like 21st century social media is such a big thing. How do you feel that you connect to all these different types of artists through social media?
Create, discuss, and advocate for art. No box dance.
Artists, you mean other dance companies or
other dance companies, individuals. How do you see that the company is
Well, our social media platforms are quite strong.
Yes, they are.
Very
Instagram is amazing.
Our Instagram and our Facebook account, we converse, all throughout the day with aspiring dancers, dance students who want to come study with us, with professional dancers who are dancing elsewhere and want to dance in our company, with dance festivals and theaters and just followers and fans.
A flash 4. We ask all of our guests to answer 4 questions in a flash. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, here we go.
Flash 4.
Okay, if you had to recommend a research to our audience, what would it be?
Recommend a what? A research?
A resource.
A resource.
Yes. It can be a book, a podcast, someone to follow, website, blog.
Very subjectively, our Instagram account.
Okay, what was the first dance you remember seeing?
Aide Memoire, a piece that Rami created in '96. That was really one of his flagship pieces about the memory of the Holocaust. And it blew me away, and I had chills throughout.
Nice. Do you think social media has a positive influence to the dance world? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes. Awesome. What is your favorite social media platform?
Personally, Instagram. Personally, Facebook. Professionally, Instagram.
There you go.
Well, are there any other questions that you want to include on the interview, or something that you feel like you didn't get to talk about enough?
I just want to make it clear that dancers who would like to spend a semester or study abroad with us also realize that they could send us an audition video online. So, if you are living in Omaha or in Seattle, where we may not hold auditions, and you'd like to audition, you could go on to the Dance Journey page, and there you could see how you could submit an online audition video where you have to demonstrate some ballet exercises and also submit some improv work, and then we get back to you within a few days.
That's great. I love how you guys are using the digital space. And for those of you who are listening, we'll definitely link everything that Yoni mentioned in our show notes, so it'll be easy for you to apply and get involved.
Excellent.
So, as we wrap up, could you go ahead and share with our audience your social media handles so they can follow you and stay connected?
Sure. Basically, Kibbutz Dance Company on all the platforms.
Awesome. We love it. Well, again, thank you so much for this conversation.
Thank you.
Thanks for taking your time to tune into Dance Behind the Screen, a bi-monthly interview series where we go behind the screen to question process, product, and social media. Be sure to follow us on social media at KNOW Box Dance. See you next time, and don't forget to say no to the box.